All right, let's jump right into a really critical and kind of sneaky actuarial risk, the problem of selective withdrawals. We're going to unpack exactly how this whole thing works, how it can systematically poison an insurer's data and lead them straight into a very dangerous pricing trap.
Okay, so let's start with what seems like a simple question. I mean, on the surface, a customer leaving is just a customer leaving, right? But what happens when it's your healthiest customers, the ones you expect to pay premiums for years, who are consistently walking out the door? Well, that sets off a powerful chain reaction that can seriously threaten an entire product line. Let's dig into why that is.
This whole process starts with a completely rational decision made by an individual. Just look at the two mindsets here. If you're a healthy policyholder, you're thinking, you know what, the chances of me making a claim are pretty slim. Those premiums start to feel less like protection and more like a cost, money you could be putting somewhere else. So you're much more likely to lapse. But flip that around, if you're a higher risk individual, that insurance cover is everything. It's essential. The premium is a small price to pay for that peace of mind. Lapsing isn't even on the table. And that difference in perceived value, well, that's the engine that drives this entire problem of selective withdrawal.
And of course, this isn't just theory. The examiners love to test this. Take a look at this question from a past paper. It's asking about different types of selection. Well, the behavior we just described, that's a perfect textbook example of class selection. The policyholders are basically sorting themselves into two different classes, the leavers and the stayers, based on their underlying health. Nailing that connection is exactly how you tackle a question like this. So, and this is the crucial part, these individual decisions don't just happen in a vacuum. When you add them all up across thousands and thousands of policies, they have this massive collective impact. They literally start to change the genetic makeup of the insurer's entire book of business. The risk profile of the group that remains is fundamentally different from the group that was originally signed up. And this chart just shows you exactly what that transformation looks like. You can see how the portfolio's composition just gets warped over time. You might have started with a book dominated by low-risk, healthy lives. But after years of selective withdrawals, that healthy slice has shrunk, and the proportion of average risk and, more importantly, high-risk lives has grown significantly. The portfolio has literally gotten sicker, all because the healthy people decided to leave the party early. And let's be clear, this isn't just some theoretical shift on a chart. It has a direct, measurable consequence. Just as the course notes say, the average mortality experience of the group that's left behind gets worse. The insurers start seeing more claims than they planned for from that group, not because they made a mistake in underwriting, but because the very nature of the group has been altered from the inside out. Okay, so this leads us to the next link in the chain, the corruption of data. What does this new, higher-risk portfolio do to the historical data that actuaries rely on for everything? Well, this is where the problem gets really insidious, because the company's own experience starts to tell a very misleading story. This quote from the core reading just hits the nail on the head. We all know a decrement is just a reason for leaving a group, but the key here is that withdrawal is not a random decrement. It is a selective one. The people who withdraw are systematically healthier, they have lighter mortality, and they leave behind the ones with heavier mortality. And this is the perfect setup for a concept you absolutely have to know: spurious selection. Imagine an actuary looking at the data. They see that mortality rates are going up as policies get older. They might think, that's just the effect of underwriting wearing off over time. But that's a spurious conclusion. The real hidden reason is the selective withdrawals. The worsening mortality isn't just about time passing. It's about the composition of the group changing at every single duration. That's spurious selection in action. And you guessed it, the examiners are all over this concept. A question like this is practically begging you to use the selective withdrawal example. A top-tier answer would explain exactly how those withdrawals cause mortality to appear to worsen by duration, and then point out that blaming it all on underwriting wear-off is a classic case of spurious selection. So now we get to the financial consequences. What happens when an actuary who doesn't account for this distortion uses that corrupted historical data to price new products? This right here is where the data inadequacy trap springs shut. This table just lays out the disaster. So you take the raw data from your sicker in-force book. That means your mortality assumption is going to be inflated, right? But here's the trap. You use that inflated assumption to price policies for brand new healthy applicants. That results in a premium that is way too high and uncompetitive for those healthy people. They'll just go to a competitor. But that same premium might look like a great deal to higher risk applicants. You end up attracting a pool of lives that is far riskier than you planned for, and the premium you're charging is dangerously inadequate to cover their actual risk. You are guaranteed to lose money. And this just kicks off a vicious cycle, what actuaries call an adverse selection spiral, or a death spiral. Your flawed premiums drive away the good risks and attract the bad ones. This makes your claims experience even worse, which pollutes your data even more. So what do you do next year? You use that even worse data, your premiums go up again, you drive away even more healthy people, and the whole thing just spirals downwards, accelerating your losses. So when you see an application question like this on an exam, you need to be ready to list the consequences. First, obviously, inadequate premiums that lead to future losses. Second, your reserves are going to be insufficient. If your pricing is wrong, your reserving will be wrong too, meaning you haven't put enough money aside to pay the claims that are coming. All of this leads to missing your profit targets, and in a severe enough case, it can pose a real threat to the company's solvency.
Okay, that was a pretty deep dive. So let's pull it all together and consolidate everything into a clear recap and some key points that are absolutely perfect for your revision notes.
This four-step chain right here is the whole story. Think of it like dominoes. It all starts with one simple, rational choice by a customer. That choice, multiplied many times, leads to a shift in the portfolio. That shifted portfolio gives you corrupted data because of spurious selection. And finally, using that bad data leads directly to pricing failure and financial trouble. If you understand this chain, you understand the entire risk. All right, get your flashcards out because this slide is pure gold for revision. Each of these bullet points is a core concept you have to have locked in. Selective decrement, increase in concentration of impaired lives, spurious selection, the pricing trap, inadequate premiums, and the threat to solvency. You know these points, you know this topic inside and out. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive. I'll leave you with this final thought. If this risk is so real and so dangerous, what can we actually do about it? The real challenge for an actuary isn't just reacting to this stuff in a pricing model. It's about getting ahead of it. It's about designing products that healthy people actually want to keep, and building strategies to manage your in-force book so this spiral never gets a chance to start. And that right there is where the theory really meets the road.